It is my pleasure today to introduce today's presenter, Paul LaSalle. With over 40 years of experience, Paul is an experienced classroom trainer who brings an understanding and appreciation of business needs and objectives into the classroom. Working through numerous organizations, Paul has served as a systems analyst, a network analyst, network architect, project manager, management consultant, and business analysis. He is also co-author of the TCP IP Bible. Paul, we appreciate you being with us today. It's all yours.
Hey, Brent. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I wanted to spend a bit of time with you folks today talking about the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, which has recently changed to be updated. So let's take a look at the history of this. ITIL has led, the Information Technology Infrastructure Library, or ITIL, has led the service management industry with guidance and training certificate programs for over 30 years. ITIL 4 is an update that reshapes a lot of the established practices in the context of customer experience. What you might know as CX/UX, it's called customer experience these days, also value streams and digital transformation. ITIL 4 embraces new ways of working which are already happening in the industry, like Lean, like Agile, like Scrum, like DevOps. So this is a major update from the previous ITIL 2011 version. ITIL started off in the 1980s, but back in the day when Margaret Thatcher was the Prime Minister of Britain. It started off as British Standard number 15,000. And 10 years later, they came out with the first books, ITIL version 1. In 2000, they came out with ITIL version 2, which focused on service delivery, which is tactical, was medium-term future planning, and service support, which was the operational piece. 2007, they mimicked how we developed our software in ITIL to support what was called a waterfall project, where we looked at different elements starting the strategy and moving down into operations. And this was referred to as the service life cycle in ITIL version 3. It was continuing on through ITIL 2011, where they tweaked ITIL to add in 2 extra processes, one for service design coordination, the other for business relationship management. Continuing with ITIL version 2011, in 2016, they started what we're going to talk about today with the guiding principles. And at that time, there was 9 of them. So there was 9 guiding principles. And in 2018, with the advent of ITIL 4, they pared that down to 7 guiding principles, which is where we're going to start talking about things today. One of the new constructs in ITIL version 4 is this element called the service value system. And by the book, the ITIL service value system describes how all of the different components and activities in an organization work together as a system to enable value creation. Realistically, every request we have in an organization starts as either a demand or an opportunity. Either something, we've got a new opportunity to do something new, or something broke, we have to fix it, we have a demand. So we typically start with this and we end with some sort of value creation for our customers and users. So in the middle of this, all sorts of things happen. Today, we're going to talk about the idea of the guiding principles, and these are the 7 guiding principles, but that's not all that's in the service value system. We also have the idea of governance. Governance, looking at arbitrating maybe the rocky relationship between business and IT. Also looking at the service value chain activities. Now this, those of you that know Lean might say, oh, this is familiar footing, where we look at the idea of service value streams. And ITIL focuses on plan, improve, engage, design, transition, obtain, build, and deliver and support as a way of being flexible. Not every organization chooses to build their own software. Some may obtain commercial off-the-shelf software. So it's a lot of different methods of flexibility in this new construct called the service value system. ITIL now encompasses 34 practices in total. There's a lot more practice, and in practices that you might recognize as being familiar: the practice of project management, the practice of risk management, the practice of business analysis. They're folded into ITIL now because they have to work well together for your organization to succeed. We still have the continual improvement practice, but today we're going to focus on these 7 principles. What I wanted to look at was to describe the principles to you first, and then to give you, maybe the first time you've seen this, to give you a practical application of those principles. This material is pulled from the Create, Deliver, Support 2nd level ITIL book, so you may or may not have seen this yet. Okay, so what is a guiding principle? These are recommendations that can guide an organization in all circumstances, regardless of the kinds of changes that the organization may have in its goals, strategies, type of work, or management structure. These are also reflected in many other frameworks or methods or standards and philosophies and other bodies of knowledge, such as Lean or Agile or DevOps or the control objectives for IT. Control objectives for IT covers a lot of the same ground that ITIL does, just in a different way. ITIL is a framework. And in that framework, we give you considerations. You should think about doing this. You should think about doing that. It's not a standard. It's a framework. So when we look at the idea of using things like COBIT, ITIL gives us recommendations that we ought to consider doing. COBIT says, have you done that yet? It's auditory in nature. Same ground, kind of a different thing. But these are a lot of reflected in ITIL version 4 now. We also allow organizations to effectively integrate the use of multiple methods in an overall approach to service management. So guiding principles allows us to effectively customize ITIL for our organizational context. So let's take a look at the 7 guiding principles. Starting with focus on value. So first we look at focus on value. Everything we do should link to value defined by the consumer's needs. If we're doing something and it doesn't provide value to our consumers, we've got to ask ourselves, why are we doing that? We also need to be cognitive that value changes over time and in different circumstances. Think about your brand new cell phone. The old beater you had, well, you chucked that one on the table. But as I got the new one, ooh, I want to keep this one good. I put it in a case and take care of it and stuff. Value changes over time and in different circumstances. We want to ensure that our customers come back to us for more business. So as a result, we try to shore up our value statement to make sure that it stays current. And that is the context of a lot of changes that happen in our organization. So we focus on value. As we go through our projects, many of which are maintenance and enhancement projects, we have a choice of where do we start. Do we start at the very beginning, or do we keep some what we did well last time? This is start where you are, the second principle. We assess where we are. We use our measurement framework to look at what exists already as the starting point. And we build outwards from there. We assess rationally. This is a shout out to Agile, progressing iteratively with feedback. Don't do the whole project all at once. That's the old waterfall way of doing things. Break it down to small pieces. Start small, building into large improvements. The reason why we start small and building large improvements is it gives us more chance for course corrections. It also gives us a deliverable earlier for our customers. Oh, look, we can see that part's working. Involve the right stakeholders. So collaborate and promote visibility. Make sure that if we're going to make a change, people know that change is coming. Make sure that we see all of the stakeholders. Don't miss stakeholders, and realize that as a practice, if you're going to err on the side of inclusion rather than exclusion. We want to cover all the folks. If people make a change and they don't promote visibility of that change, the rumor mill often takes over and people start to think, oh, well, they're going to do something horrible because they're not telling us about it. So this idea of promoting visibility is a very useful concept in a corporate context. If we look at thinking and working holistically, even though we're looking at small little bits over here in terms of progressing iteratively with feedback, don't lose sight of the whole picture, especially in context where you're looking at maintenance and enhancement projects. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. So if I have, let's just say, a payroll system, and this payroll system has a, a time card piece in it, and maybe we've also got an HR piece in it. We've also got a salary grid in here as well. So if I've got these 3 different elements, and I look at a maintenance enhancement project for this center one, I need to make sure that when I pluck it out and modify it, and then I put it back, that it fits in the same slot. I need to consider the whole so that everything does work properly together and continue to work properly together. So this idea of realizing that nothing stands alone, that we have end-to-end visibility, this is important to look at. As a practice, we try to keep things simple and practical. So minimum number of steps, focus on the outcome. If we find things that have no value, well, why are we doing them? Once again, complexity for complexity's sake is anathema to the guiding principles. Finally, we look at the idea of optimize and automate. Well, Automation is about removing the innovative work for humans to do and leaving repetitive tasks for machines to do. So when we optimize, we make something as effective as useful as it needs to be, and we optimize first and then we automate. Okay, so these are the 7 guiding principles that we work on. Now let's look at applying those. So here's a simple application. All right, service relationships are about value co-creation for stakeholders. We talk about value co-creation. This is a new term for ITIL 4 because we get value from both sides. If I'm an IT department, I'm providing you services. Well, the value's in the service, but maybe you pay the bill, and that's the value coming back to me. So we don't just create value anymore, we co-create value, realizing this is a double-edged sword. Each service interaction is an opportunity to elevate the capabilities of another party. So each ITIL guiding principle may be used for one group to improve the capabilities of another group. For example, your IT department, ITIL calls a service provider, and customers, those who know the requirements, can use the ITIL guiding principles to improve user capabilities. So the people that consume the service on a day-to-day basis. Let's take a look at those one by one. So we look at focus on value in the context of improving user capabilities. Well, users should be able to understand the purpose and context of their work and service usage. They understand why it is they're doing what they're being told to do. So they should be encouraged to offer service improvements that may contribute to value co-creation. Too often that's discouraged in organizations. We look at the second principle, start where you are. Well, the improvement of user experience should be based on our current practices, based on habits, and based on expectations. Who better to improve the application or web interface or whatever it is that you're working with than the people who are using it every single day? So those radical changes that we might make rarely work out well. If we look at Keel and Carmel, 2 Harvard School of Business profs, or if we look at Edward Deming, the father of quality assurance, through his model Plan, Do, Check, Act, they've both told us that radical change is a really bad idea. It traumatizes the workforce, just the same way as if you lost a loved one. You end up grieving, you deny, you blame self, you blame others, you bargain, you do all those typical emotional cycle of changes things. So radical changes in user experience are rarely perceived as changes for the better, and often they lead to resistance by users. People tend to resist what's different. So in this case, if we look at starting where we are, maybe we can minimize some of that required change. If we look at the third principle, progressing iteratively with feedback. So all changes and requirements to users, to service delivery, to assessment and service usage procedures, and other aspects of service experience should be tested prior to getting to the user, should be tested and continually reviewed based on user feedback. These are often referred to in organizations as tension metrics. You may have heard the words, you can have it good or you can have it fast, but you can't have it both. You can make it easy to use or you can make it work well, but you can't have it both. Well, we want both. And user feedback is how we get to having both. So users should be encouraged to provide their feedback, and feedback follow-up actions should be clear and transparent to the user community. And our fourth principles, collaborate and promote visibility. Let's just pause on the word collaborate for a moment, just to make sure that we're all clear on what we're talking about here. When we look at the idea of collaboration, this is different than cooperation. If I'm pushing my great big elephant up the hill and you cooperate, you're just standing out of the way. You're not helping me. The elephant's still just as heavy as if you weren't helping me at all. But if you collaborate, that implies that we have a common goal and you're going to help me get this elephant pushed up that hill. So when we talk about collaborating and promoting visibility, we're looking at working together. Where joint operations are required, users should understand the need for collaboration. So why are we working together? And we should help each other as well as service providers, again, IT departments and suppliers and other parties that might be involved. So when services don't operate as intended, or when a user does not know how to use it, calling for help, reporting an incident, getting help from your service desk, all these things should be safe, should be easy, and they should be encouraged. Our fifth principle, think and work holistically. Again, we want to keep track of the whole picture. So services and their role in the value creation should be visible and they should be transparent to all involved parties. So users should understand the context of their work and dependencies. So if you do this correct, Mr. User, then the next people who pick up your work product will be able to use that as an input into their process and go forward from there. Users should have a picture of that whole. They should see how the whole puzzle fits together and realize the importance of their work to the organization. The consequence of change to their organization, if they do something that's different than what's being requested, should be important to users. It should be made important to users. In our sixth principle, we talk about keeping it simple and practical. Many institutional organizations, and I mean this in the corporate culture sense, many institutional organizations suffer from what's called paradigm paralysis. I don't know if you heard that term before, but the sentence kind of indicates that is this: we do it this way here because that's the way it's always been done here. Quite often, this leads to retaining complex or out-of-date practices and procedures. So in an effort to keep it as simple and practical, we need to look at user interfaces and all of the touch points as to be as simple as possible. Touch points leads us to a conversation on customer user experience. The idea of touch points is that each time you communicate with somebody, well, for example, this seminar, when you communicate with me, you're developing an opinion on global knowledge through what I'm saying to you and how Brent's presenting the information. And so these touch points lead to what we call moments of truth, or a decision point where you say, ooh, I really like that organization, or maybe I don't like that organization. And so users do that in their work as well. So all interfaces and other touch points should be kept as simple as possible to make things as clear as possible. Users should have an opportunity to propose improvements to the interface, and these proposals should be treated seriously up front, and they should also be treated transparently. Finally, we talk about optimizing and automate. Well, the first thing that we do is we optimize. We make sure that what we're doing is doing the best way we can do it. It's working as best as we can make it work. Then we look at the idea of automation. So continual optimization and automation of user experience should be a theme of all touch points and service interactions between users and service providers. Recently, I spoke to an organization who had just purchased an AI system to work on their operations environment so they can automatically handle questions and handle, I should say, incidents from users. The idea of automation is affecting our infrastructures more and more as we go down time. So we're looking at this idea of continual optimization. It should be, again, a theme of all touch points between service interactions between users and providers. Okay, so you've seen how we take the 7 principles, and in this particular instance, we applied it to improving user capabilities. You could apply this to almost anything in your organization. This is a fundamental guidance from ITIL 4. So these guiding principles embody the core messages of ITIL and service management in general, supporting successful interactions and good decisions of all types at all levels of the organization. They can be used to guide organizations in their work as they adopt a service management approach and adapt ITIL guidance to their own specific needs and their own specific circumstances. The guiding principles encourage and support organizations in continual improvement at all levels of the organization. So here's the spot you're waiting for. Are there any questions? Over to you, Brent.
Thank you so much, Paul. So I'm gonna start here at the top, and we'll get through as many as we can get through.
Right.
So the first one here is what is a recommendation of the focus on value guiding principles?
What's the recommendation on the focus on value? Well, I guess what you want to look at doing is judge each one of your actions in the organization. Does it provide value to my consumer? Does it provide value to my customer? And if it does, great, tune it. If not, well, why are you doing it then?
All right. So next here, and I'd remind everybody, if you see a question on here that you want answered more than another one, be sure to give it a thumbs up, and so it bumps up to the top for me here. Okay. What we mean as value considering the guiding principle?
What do we mean as?
Yeah, what do we mean?
I'm not sure if I
Yeah, I'm not quite sure either. We're gonna just get rid of that one. All right. Say the First one at the top here is how do you promote visibility help and value creation?
Okay, so you're talking about collaborate and promote visibility. In the environment of a change, make sure you advertise what's upcoming. Make sure you consult all the stakeholders. So the people who have an interest in your project or activity or change, don't hide anything from them. Consult all of them. This is the idea of promote visibility.
Perfect. I like the idea of having co-creation with the users. What about having co-sharing the values with the users?
Oh, it's in intrinsic. It's built in.
Perfect. Okay. How do you balance ideas of value beyond monetary when you have two classes of consumer stakeholders, semi-internal units or B2B versus external customers or B2C?
So how do I balance? What was the start of that question?
So how do you balance the ideas of value beyond monetary when you have two kind of classes of consumer stakeholders?
Okay, so if we look at the idea of value in business where our goal is to make money, we typically focus on the dollars and cents parts of things. And yeah, and if you're not going to be looking at it in business, if you're looking at it as in a nonprofit organization or a government context, another tool we use is called value on investment as opposed to return on investment. This is the non-monetary way of looking at this. And this could be the school of public opinion. It could be a lot of different methods that we look at to add value. Think of your, wherever you are in the world, and think of your favorite sports team and how visible that favorite sports team is in local charities or notable events. They're adding value to their organization that's not tied to money at that point.
Thank you so much. Hey, I'm seeing some questions come in through the chat. If you could please put your questions into the Q&A section. That way everyone can see your question and we can answer it for you. Okay, can you speak more about service management value and what is the difference between service management and service delivery?
Okay, service management is the entire field. It's the follow-on from systems management. So if we look at systems versus service management, consider this. In an organization, you have different people that manage different systems. Maybe I'm, say, the database person or the VPN person or whatever it may be in the infrastructure. And that database in and of itself isn't as valuable as it is as part of a whole, where we look at that database as the temporary storage area for, say, our line of business application that does, I don't know, whatever we do as a business, right? So the idea of a service is a broader definition. We talk about service as a means of delivering value. So whatever it takes to deliver value, that's what we talk about in the context of service. So service management is that organization's set of capabilities that we do in delivering value in the form of services. And the last part of that question, once again, was versus. Need your help here, Brent.
Sorry, yeah, I had to go back and look at it.
You disposed of it already.
No, I'm good. I got it. I found it. So semi-internal units or B2B, B2B versus external customers or B2C.
Okay, read me the whole question again because you missed
Sure.
the part I wanted.
No worries. How do you balance ideas of value beyond monetary when you have two classes of consumer stakeholders?
Yeah, that's the wrong question. Next question. You skipped one.
Did I?
Yep. Talking about service management versus something else, buddy.
Good gracious, where do we get here? Oh, here we go.
We put Brent in the spot.
No, I got you.
Sorry,
You're
Brent.
good. You're not gonna get me flustered here. I got it. Can you speak more about service management value, and what is the difference between service management and service delivery?
Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, so service management we covered. We talked about service management versus systems management. Now looking at service delivery in the context of ITIL, service delivery is tactical planning. So just to be clear, we have strategic planning, we have tactical planning, we operate operational planning. Strategic planning is your farthest future horizon, whatever that is for your organization. You may have a short time horizon of a year, or it could be 10 years in some organizations, right? Service delivery in ITIL is code for that tactical horizon, which is shorter than your strategic. So if your strategic is 1 year, your tactical might be 6 months. Another way of thinking of that would be the strategic would be the what, and the tactical would be the how. So service delivery focuses on that medium-term horizon and the how. It's part of service management, but it's not distinct from it. It's encompassed in the idea of service management. I hope that answers your question.
Perfect. Okay. Does ITIL 4 change the concept of service operations tier 1 to 3, starting from help desk to back-end IT support? And the second, well, I'll let you answer that first, then I'll get to the second part. Go ahead.
Yeah, you can see my memory's getting short over here. I'm getting old. So the idea of looking at traditional IT support organizations where you have, the service desk, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, ITIL 4 accounts for that. But it also accounts for some of the new concepts, because one of the shortcomings of getting a call that comes in that is an important incident that requires expertise from level 3 to solve it, well, then we end up with these time lags where we have the incident calling into the service desk, and the service desk applies their knowledge and says, I need some help, and they escalate. Well, that takes time to escalate to level 2, and as level 2 does their own work on investigating this, and they realize I need help from level 3. Well, hours may have elapsed at that point in time. This may be a very important occurrence for the business. So there's a new concept that people are using now called drop-in swarming. And this is where folks from level 2 and level 3 are able to actively monitor the queue, what's coming into level 1, and see this situation as it's occurring. And that way you can use the traditional IT organization, or you can use drop-in swarming to be able to go and cherry pick that solution and shorten the time scale of answering it for the customer, rather than waiting for it to ratchet up through the different levels of the IT organization.
Perfect. And does tier 1 now require to resolve the issue as much as possible to support SVS?
No, as a matter of fact, quite the opposite.
Okay.
What we're seeing in trends in service desks is the service desk is more about people than about technology at this point. So we're seeing a lot more, whatever it takes to get the user back into working conditions, because anybody can fix tech. So it's more about people than it was about technology.
Perfect. That's a great question. See if we create time for one or two more here. Would you suggest that ITIL 4 can be effectively used at the same time as TOGAF? If so, how?
Okay, so let's just talk about enterprise architectures in general, TOGAF being an example of one. And for those that don't know TOGAF, it's not a foot disease. It's the Open Groups Architecture Framework, okay? So it's an open architecture framework, and it speaks to 8 different levels by letter. If I'm just trying to remember my TOGAF, I can see the book on the shelf over there, but I want to pull it down. And there are 3 different architectures pieces in TOGAF. I think they might be phases B, C, and D that speak to your infrastructure architecture, your applications architecture, and your data architectures. Now, I might be wrong on those by the letters, but I'm pretty sure that they fit in that perspective. So if we look at the idea of TOGAF in the context of ITIL, what TOGAF does for us in system development is it shortens up our time scale to bring on new services, because the architecture's already been pre-created for the infrastructure, for the applications, for the data. And so if we look at this as a big fill-in form, our system development's a big fill-in form, well, part of that form is filled in because of TOGAF, or because of enterprise architecture, or DINDAF, or DODAF, or MODAF, or whatever architecture framework you might be using.
Fantastic. Let's do one more. Do ITIL V3 2011 certifications expire? And if so, do you need to take an ITIL V4 class/exam to remain current?
Okay, Brent's going to want me to say, yes, you have to take an ITIL version 4 class, but sadly, the truth is no, your ITIL version 3 certifications do not expire. But there is a huge difference between the tracks between them. Right, so to make sure you take a look at the Axelis website, or maybe the Global Knowledge website, when they talk about the pathfinders to get to ITIL certification, because it's different than it used to be, especially if you've taken a level 2 exam from ITIL version 3 or 2011. The format of questions being 5310 sort of format is all gone. All questions are 40-question exams now.
Perfect. Okay, we're right at 30 minutes. So, Paul, thank you so much. I always appreciate when you can join us, and man, I mean, you kill it with these things. So thank you so much. I hope everyone enjoyed today's webinar. If you want to learn more about this topic, there's a couple of things you can take here at Global Knowledge, ITIL 4 Foundations. If you'd like to take this class, we can offer you a fantastic discount right now. If you use Webinar 25 in the US or CA Webinar 25 in Canada, we can take 25% off your next class. So be sure to visit Global Knowledge's website to access free additional resources like technical articles, white papers, and webinars. I know we didn't get to all the questions. Some of these are fantastic things to engage with our social media folks about, just make them earn their money. GK on ITIL on Twitter, and we're also on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. So anyway, be sure to visit us there, and we can answer those questions. So thank you guys for being with us today. Again, Paul, thank you so much. Everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Brent.